For those with good taste.
Hey, what is going on, everybody? It's your boys from For Those With Good Taste. I'm Matt. He's Lenny.
Hello.
And we're back in the studio to bring you everything there is to know about combat sports, MMA, boxing. Hell, who knows? We might even throw a couple of wrestling bits in there.
There was a big event last night, man.
I figured there would be, so just leave that window open.
WrestleMania Backlash.
Well, before we can talk about what happened yesterday, I missed some time last week, and we didn't get a chance to talk about probably the greatest boxer on the planet right now.
Probably. I mean, he just is.
He just is, yeah. And we're talking about Canelo Alvarez and his dismantling of Billy Joe Saunders. What'd you think of the fight, man?
It wasn't like a barn burner of a fight, but I thought it was pretty interesting. As a person who doesn't follow Billy Joe.
We did it again.
Damn. BJS. As a person who doesn't follow BJS or BJs very closely, he was interesting to watch, man. I thought he turned it on in the middle rounds, but it seemed like the whole time it was really just Canelo looking for the opportunity. And once he landed, the man cracks. So
you just saw that there was just levels to this game. I think that's a common, phrase that we use on this show when we're talking about some of the levels that these athletes compete at. Canelo Alvarez, man. In some instances, that fight looked like it could have gotten ugly or it could have gotten close. And before you know it, he's out there putting a hell of an uppercut on a man.
Yeah, like I said, I think it looked like he was having a little bit of trouble in the middle rounds with the jab, the unorthodox style that BJS had. Yeah, but
I like what you're doing there. The BJS works.
Correcting myself. But Canelo there's just not anybody at his weight class from what I can see that is going to really challenge him at all, right?
That's the unfortunate part of that type of performance is that Billy Joe, BJS, was the guy, right? At least in the boxing community, that a lot of people thought might give him some trouble. I think we got what we expected to get from it. If for lack of a better word, we all knew what Canelo was. It was just knowing whether or not he'd be able to just completely clear out this division, which he has. At this point, we're just playing the waiting game and kind of wondering who's going to be the one to step up to the plate next.
Did you see the graphic for his... It was the way his eye broke. Like, there's a graphic that shows all the pins and shit that they're going to have to put in to restructure his face. And it more goes to all the people that said he fucking quit, which is just, like, the most asinine bullshit out there.
Man, could we ever get to a point where people just stop being stupid when it comes to combat sports?
And start being real?
What'd you just do? Cut it out.
I think it's the real world.
It's the real world. Sorry, I'm channeling my inner MTV in the challenge. Let's stop saying that athletes are scared, athletes are quitting. If anyone punched you remotely close to the way that he took that punch against Canelo, you're tapping out immediately. You're tapping the strikes. You're Tito Ortizing it.
Well, people brought up like a bunch of different instances of people having like that bad of an eye injury and continuing to fight through it. But it's like, dude, like that doesn't mean they're fucking right. Like
he wasn't gonna win.
That's my greatest point here. Is like it's okay to admit when you're outclassed and like there's no sense in like, dude, if your eye is that bad. Like, it's only going to get worse. And, like, that's a pretty important, vital part of your fucking life. And I understand being a champion is what these guys work for their entire life. To the point where I don't think they're going to quit. I don't think they're going to stop fighting unless they have to. And it's not only his decision, keep that in mind. There's a doctor there and there's a corner there that has to make that decision, too.
We'll put a pin in it because there's more talks of what being a tough guy gets you. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Where does he benefit from just letting Canelo beat the shit out of him for 6 more rounds with a broken eye? Yeah. It doesn't make any sense.
In a fight that it was questionable if he had won rounds as it was. Like, I think most of us agree he probably took 1 or 2 of them, but, like, it wasn't like he had any clear-cut advantage that he was able to exploit that he was going to come back with.
And if you're Billy Joe Saunders in that instance, you're thinking to yourself, man, let me step away from this. And I'm not saying he gave up by any means, but what I'm saying is if you're looking at it from a logical standpoint, nobody knows how well he was doing in there more than him.
Yes, he was feeling it.
Like so if he knew that, I'm not going to be able to go on, we should be able to take that for what it's worth and understand that he was facing the number 1 pound-for-pound boxer of this generation. Mm-hmm. I don't see him giving up. Props to BJS. I hope we see him soon.
Last thing before we move on, so he's got to fight one more person to unify the titles. Caleb Plant, is that the name?
Yeah,
of it?
so that's the name.
Is Caleb Plant or Callum?
Yeah, Caleb.
Caleb Plant. Okay.
That's the fight. And
nothing to get you excited about, I'm sure, right?
Nothing to get me excited about. The only thing that does somewhat get me excited is that there are talks of a Charlo brother in the future. And boxing fans, boxing community knows the Charlo name is Jermal and Jermel.
Mm-hmm.
Both names have been tossed around as a possible fight. I believe it's Jermal who's the big dog on campus, so to speak. Everybody knows that that's the next fight that Canelo should be moving up for.
Do those guys stand a chance?
They're good. They are good. I just don't see anybody standing a chance at this point.
I've only seen them briefly, and I don't think they've fought any big enough fights to make me think they have a chance against Canelo.
Boxing is one of those sports that you really are only gauging a person's talent based on what you're seeing, and you can't hope to see better fights with better names, but you can only go on what they're giving you, right? And I think that's the talent
that they're put in front of.
That's the talent that they're put in front of. So the hope is that these guys are sitting on a wealth of talent that will exceed anything that we've seen them face already.
For sure.
But the instance is Canelo is quite a mountain to try and charge up.
I'm excited to see where we go next. I mean, boxing, for lack of depth, they have 3 or 4 guys right now that I think that they will continue to sell pay-per-views with. Yep. I think we were gonna put this towards the end, but I think we should just get into it now.
I was right there with you.
So
let's talk about it.
Triple A, I think we would have Canelo as one of those guys. The second biggest star in boxing right now has got to be Tyson Fury, right?
He's a close second, man. That man has become a rock star sensation.
So coming down the pipeline today, as a matter of fact, and I think at least me personally, I'd started getting suspicious because I'd been starting to see a lot of Deontay Wilder tape coming out.
So there was a lot of snickerings going on the World Wide Web about the possibility of arbitration ruling in Deontay Wilder's favor.
Yeah, and it seems as though that has been the case.
And we've got not a solidified date yet, but we now understand that these two have to at least sign a deal to fight before September of this year.
Yeah, so talk to us about that, Matt, as somebody who maybe understands it a little bit better. If anybody out there is like a less knowledgeable like myself, how do we get a required fight in boxing?
So everyone is familiar with the guaranteed rematch clause in a lot of these contracts.
Yeah, if you're a big enough boxer, you put that in there.
Yep, and what you're seeing right now is unfortunately one of the loopholes of having a draw in the first match is there was no clear-cut loser or winner in that fight. So my understanding is that the same way if you retire during a contract, your contract doesn't stop. It's just going to restart when you're done or when you're ready to come back. This is an instance where that rematch clause is still in effect because no one actually won that first fight, and then Deontay Wilder lost that second fight.
Okay, so
now
he's in. So he's of course. And rightfully so, although I thought he would want to take another tune-up fight. With the changes, so that you saw those clips that have come out, right? With the changes he seems to be trying to make in his style, I was just thinking maybe he would want to take a couple tune-up fights, maybe one tune-up fight. And I say changes lightly because I don't know how you feel. I wasn't overly impressed with either of the clips that have come out.
It's amazing what you can do with the video.
Yeah, but those body shots look weak, bro.
So my spiel on this is everyone knows that Deontay Wilder will be given the opportunity to take what's known as a step-aside fight. So he can step aside and fight someone else and allow Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua the fight that all of us want to see. He's not going to do that.
No.
Because who's the guy who threw his management team and his training team under the bus when he lost that fight? Who's the guy that blamed everything else besides himself? Lenny, you asked me a question of, do I see anything that's going to change? I haven't seen anything change.
Were you at all impressed with those clips that he put out?
What do those clips do for us?
His footwork looked okay, right? They
footwork
looked a little better. His jab looked kind of nice.
It looks like someone told you need to move your feet.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're doing now.
Why isn't he boxing in actual rings either? Can we talk about that? Like once was in a basement, the second time was in like a backyard. What's going on here, man?
The
Getting
boxing,
back to his roots.
This is no secret to the boxing community. Deontay Wilder is not a conventional boxer. No, he did not come up as a conventional boxer, and I think that's one of the reasons why his story is as great as it was. Right, for the reasons that he took on combat sports was to save his daughter's life, you can't help but cheer for a person like that. In this instance now, we find him making videos of him being in a basement, making videos of him boxing outside. We're seeing everything but what we should be seeing is him taking boxing more serious, right? Getting more into the fundamentals of being a better boxer. The reason why you're seeing him in videos moving his feet and having head movement is because he's never done that.
Yeah.
He's always been a guy who plants his feet, stands and bangs. And that's why he lost to Tyson.
When you're going against a guy with the technical capability that Tyson Fury has, you can't, in one training,
it's going to
change
take years.
That's where I'm like, why wouldn't you? The money's still going to be there, right?
No, but it gets dicey because if he steps aside, you're now giving someone else the opportunity to do your dirty work.
To fight Fury and beat them.
So if Anthony Joshua beats Tyson Fury...
But we still have never gotten a Wilder Joshua fight, so there's still money. I guess my thing is
I am less interested about Anthony Joshua and Deonte Wilder than I have ever been. I don't need to.
But not if he beats Fury.
If Anthony Joshua beats Tyson Fury, he's gonna beat the shit out of Deonte Wilder. Why would we?
The one thing I would point out,
MMA and boxing math don't really exist.
It's not even that. It's that Fury does not handle Joshua does not handle the punches the same way that Tyson Fury does. So that's where I think that despite what could happen between Fury and Joshua, if Joshua wins that fight, I still think there's the chance of Wilder overwhelming him and knocking him out.
Here's I guess what I'm trying to say. You're not wrong.
Because Fury had to go through fire. But he in the second fight, I guess he showed you you don't have to go through fire.
He made one adjustment.
Yeah,
he made one adjustment.
Come forward,
put
right? Yeah.
Deontay Wilder on his back heel, and you had no answer for it. So I guess I'm not trying to say that no one gives a shit about the Anthony Joshua Deontay Wilder conversation, but if Tyson Fury loses to Anthony Joshua, that doesn't set up Deontay Wilder. That sets us up for a trilogy between Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, which puts him 3 or 4 fights away from ever seeing that payday.
That's fair, but at the same time, that's that time period that you're talking about needing to change your skill set to make a new outcome. Because what does any of this matter aside from a paycheck if you go against Fury again? Because is there a world, Matt, that you think that Wilder is going to change the outcome of that last fight?
I don't think so.
I think if anything, it might get worse.
I think it's going to get worse, but if you're talking about a paycheck, Deontay Wilder was already far from being relevant in boxing when it was just him and Tyson. Mm-hmm. If you tell me that we're going to see a 2-year hiatus of Joshua versus Fury and Deontay Wilder is going to go fight Luis Ortiz again, there's nobody for him to fight out there.
See, why wouldn't we want to? Like, I think
you're thinking
Wilder,
Andy Ruiz.
Yeah, why wouldn't he have gone and fought Ruiz though?
So Andy Ruiz had that questionable fight against Chris Arreola.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about 2 peas in the same pod right now because Andy Ruiz knocks out Anthony Joshua, which sets him up for his little rematch. But as soon as he loses, when's the last time you've heard about Andy Ruiz before he fought Chris Arreola?
No, I think me and T were talking about this actually about how like the biggest mistake Andy Ruiz made was losing weight. Like,
you had something going for you.
Like, you had a gimmick, you had a shtick, you had power because it's coming from that fat ass, bro. Like, what are you?
You're hoping that he's not a one-hit wonder, but let's call it what it is. That fight was a fluke. And it is now setting up where Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury aren't getting closer to the rest of the heavyweights in that division.
They're setting themselves apart.
They're setting that distance so far that it doesn't matter who's in the wings because it's just about them right now.
So, I mean, at least we're going to get a decently big fight at the end of the year for heavyweight boxing. And you're probably going to see at the beginning of next year or sometime during the mid of 2022, finally get the matchup between Fury. As long as he beats Wilder, right?
Man, this is going to get messy.
So last thing on boxing before we get into last weekend's UFC 262, I did want to ask you, did you see the stuff about the UFC blocking GSP from fighting Oscar De La Hoya?
I had heard about that, and I didn't look enough into it. But again, that's a contract dispute. He still has 2 fights on his contract.
It isn't. I mean, the problem is, Matt, and it was Josh Thompson talked about this on Weighing In, the podcast with him and John McCarthy, Big John McCarthy. He was talking about how the problem is, right? If you are a baseball player, if you're Michael Jordan and you want to retire from basketball
and go do a different sport,
you are able to.
Yep.
He was able to start baseball and basketball couldn't stop it because he was no longer, his contract was still there with the Bulls, but he's not a basketball player anymore. MMA and boxing share parts of the same sport. MMA shares part of boxing, but it is not boxing.
Right.
They are not the same company. They are two completely different companies,
Yep.
two different forms of business. Why? And aside from the UFC hating Triller and not wanting them to make money and be successful, why are you stopping GSP from earning a living? Because he's not going to fight for you ever again.
No, you just said it.
So you're holding him into a 2-fight contract that he's not going to fight for you ever again. He said there was only one guy he wanted to fight, and you wouldn't let it happen there either.
This is combat sports in general are a dick measuring contest. You just want to see who can piss the furthest and make the most money.
Mm-hmm.
You are never going to see we've talked about wanting to see UFC versus Bellator champions for years.
But this isn't cross-promotion.
So I hear you there, man. But what we're talking about here is any promotion is cross-promotion. Because Golden Boy decided to do their Golden Boy MMA. You remember when that happened?
No, I do, yeah.
And you blur the lines of this dick measuring contest, because if Golden Boy or Bob Arum with Top Rank came out and said that we're the best boxing promoter in the world, no one would argue with them. They don't say they're the best boxing promoter in the world. They say they're the best fight game promoter in the world, which is immediately going to step toes on the actual biggest fight promoter, Dana White in the UFC.
See, and this is a lot along the lines of what Dana White's point was that, you know, he literally said, ask Chuck Liddell how doing business with Oscar De La Hoya was. Because De La Hoya keeps saying, let your fighters come and make the most money they've ever made in their life. He's like, ask him how much money he actually made fighting for Oscar De La Hoya, if it was the best paycheck he's ever gotten. Fair point. I just think that GSP is going to make a lot of money off of that.
Sure.
Because he's GSP.
Yep.
I think
he probably knocks him out.
I think he's a guy who's done the amount for MMA that you should allow him to go and do whatever the fuck he wants. And I get that, because the issue here is it's not what's right between businesses. It's Dana White hates Triller and Dana White hates Oscar De La Hoya. So what Dana White wants, fuck everybody else. And he has a contract.
Why should I allow you to make money?
I just think that contract shouldn't be what stops you.
No, and it's really not, man. Because
it is, because Dana White is saying that I have you contractually obliged to not be able to do that, or obligated to not be able to do that.
If GSP wanted to get into a legal dispute with the UFC and go to war with them over this, I guarantee you there is a loophole somewhere in that contract.
Then any money he was going to make.
Okay, so we're not disagreeing here. The fact is that the contract is just a piece of paper that they say will allow them to hold GSP hostage. The fact of the matter is, if that piece of paper wasn't there, Dana White would still do everything in his power to keep GSP from fighting.
But Matt, guess who's got a boxing event coming up?
No, I know that.
Anderson Silva. How come Anderson Silva still wants to compete and he is allowed to get released from this UFC contract? It's just like double. Yeah, it's a double.
I'm not saying he's right, man.
Complete bullshit.
I'm not saying he's right. What I'm saying is that it's very difficult to use the conversation of cross. You know, you have your Bo Jacksons, your Deion Sanders, your Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan one's a little bit shady, though, because a lot of people think that he got suspended for gambling, and that's why he was able to go play baseball for a year. Say what you will. I never saw The Last Dance. We are still. I didn't actually get that from The Last Dance. I did mad research. Bunny hole, dude. You're talking about two guys who absolutely hate each other, and you're bringing up Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva is not fighting Oscar De La Hoya. Anderson Silva is not publicizing Oscar De La Hoya in any way, shape, or form outside of the fact that he's fighting in a promotion that is somewhat tied to Oscar De La Hoya.
So I get not wanting to make De La Hoya money, and I wonder if he wasn't involved, if we'd be more open to do this, because you let Ben Askren go and fight a Paul brother, right?
Yeah, man.
I do agree, and we've burned a lot of time on something that we didn't need to talk about, but
it's okay.
I do agree with Dana's point on, like, he's right about the fact that, like, all Triller is doing, like, you're not promoting fights. No. You're trying to use fighters that I've already promoted and I've already built names for.
You're trying to bury
make
them.
money. Well, no, to make money off of them.
Well,
but all of the goodwill that I've built with these fighters is you're trying to use that because you don't have you don't have your own, like, the stable of fighters to promote.
Yeah.
You don't actually have fighters to promote. You have YouTubers to promote. Yeah. And so, like, YouTubers can train boxing, but you don't have actual, real, credible
You don't have talent
names
for them to fight.
So now you're just trying to poach UFC fighters by offering them, you know, an arm and a leg as far as money. And it's kind of a dirty game.
It is a dirty game because you're playing the carrot stick game, right? Where you're dangling a carrot in front of them and telling them that it's going to be better over here. Where in all senses, it may not be.
Mm-hmm.
We'll close it with this. Oscar De La Hoya doesn't want to fight George St. Pierre. Let's call it what it is. If George St. Pierre gets his hands on Oscar De La Hoya,
I think he wants the money.
A prostitute will do a lot of things for money.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
We actually did have some pretty intense fights happen this weekend.
Yes, sir.
Some crazy, beyond crazy shit happened. Where do you want to start to unpackage it all?
Let's build up to the main event, Matt.
Okay.
So I actually, like I said, me and D talked on the phone the other day. So I watch my fights on my phone most of the time. So I missed.
That created such a dilemma.
Yeah. So I actually missed, fortunately, the Jacare arm break. I have not seen it. Don't plan on watching it.
I will talk you through it then, my man.
Yeah, I don't need you to.
Damn it. So
luckily,
much for this.
I watched I caught the KGB Lee fight, which was a lot of fun. I caught one other undercard, and then I missed Jacare because I was on the phone with D for that.
Yeah, man. Jacare versus Andre Muniz. And the thing that highlighted this fight is Muniz came into this fight saying that he was a better grappler than Jacare. And this sent waves into the commentary booth because Joe Rogan, as he is known to be, speaks in hyperbole. And he was like, dude, if you're saying that about one of probably the best grappler of all time, I think we know Jacare is not the best grappler of all time. He's probably one of the best.
I mean, that's semantics. He is, or one of.
Sure.
I think he's, especially MMA-wise, the problem is we're talking about not the same guy who's fighting today.
Okay, so
right?
thank you. That's what I'm saying. So even if he was the number one guy back then, he's not the number one guy now.
Like Strikeforce Jacare, nobody was going to the ground with him. But I think we've seen quite a few guys get to the ground with him now. And Kevin Holland looked pretty competent, and you've seen what Kevin Holland has looked like
on the ground
in the past few fights.
Yeah, it has not been good. But this all led to, an exchange on the feet where these guys are, going back and forth. And Joe again says, for him to think that he's a better grappler than Jacare Souza, this guy's got to be off his mettle. And as they're saying it, Jacare is trying to ride the back. Jacare has this guy Muniz on his back, tries to throw him, and this guy slides right over to Jacare's arm. And when I tell you that you could hear it pop, Lenny,
I've heard that.
We've said on these on this show a couple times over the last couple of weeks that something is going on in the fight world where it's making me squeamish, right? I nearly lost it when I saw and heard the arm break, to the point where before they even said it, I had the volume on very low, and I watch fights with subtitles. Don't do that because you get everything delayed. I saw it, and I was like, oh, his fucking arm is broken. And you don't see it until he stands up. This arm is indented. He's got an elbow above his elbow.
They said it again, it was Big John, I think, that was talking about this. They was calling it a spiral. It could have been potentially a spiral fracture, which is generally what you see in Kimuras. So they were talking about
corkscrew fracture. I've heard similar terms.
So Big Nog, they were saying when Frank Mir broke his arm, that's what he had happen to him. It generally happens when somebody torques your arm.
Well, because you don't know if it was the torque or if it was the fall, because he's riding him all the way down. He gets down to the ground. You don't know if that's where it starts, but then you hear him pull, and you had to wonder if Jacare was tapping right before. I won't spend any more time on it, man. One of the most gruesome things I've seen, and I saw the Frank Mir arm break. It's right up there. Yeah,
I mean, it's a brutal sport, man, and these guys are so fucking tough that they're, the great grapplers just won't tap because it's, they have too much pride, so that's where I think it could have broke before, but I just assume Jacare, because he's lived on a jiu-jitsu mat his whole life, and he's so acclaimed.
We're talking about a guy who's broken his arm before, and he stuffed it in his pants.
Yeah,
it's we are talking about a sick individual when it comes to his own health. So to think that this guy was going to tap when he's getting his arm broken.
Well, it's any of these guys, though, because Nogueira wouldn't tap.
Well,
he won't
listen,
tap.
We're getting
there's
into
a code of arms when it comes to the code of arms.
We will talk about what not tapping and being a tough guy does for you in just a few fights.
We're getting to that.
Edson Barbosa versus Shane Burgos.
Fight of the night.
Man.
Edson Barbosa, I mean, is there a guy who's got in if you just put his every minute of his career on a
highlight
reel, it's the man's he's been in wars for 15 years now. I feel like I've been watching him for. I don't know when his first fight in the UFC was. It's got to be
2011.
Yeah, he's got to be on Versus or one of those with the OG versions of it, right?
Yeah, I say 2010. Maybe even goes further than that, right? But man, when you saw he opens with a series of leg kicks that are disgusting.
Yeah. His hands looked real good in this fight.
That's what I'm saying. So he put together some of the sickest combinations, 1-2 leg kicks that I've seen. But you see Shane Burgos, shout out to this guy for his boxing capabilities, was just firing back, man. It was incredible.
His second round was great for Burgos. Like, you saw him, he was getting eaten up a lot in that first round. He didn't have an answer for the leg kicks. They were questioning him whether he's going to be able to keep it going. Second round, he comes out and he does what you have to do with a kicker and you have to do with Edson Barbosa, because there's a way that Justin Gaethje fought this man and there's a way that everybody else fought this man, right? And it's, you got to get in his face and you got to put him on the cage.
Pressure,
if you let him circle, and in this fight, Burgos, as great as his pressure was in the second round, there was far too often that Edson was able to circle off the cage.
Couldn't cut off the cage.
And get off there, yeah. And it was fucking brutal. And obviously we get this one-of-a-kind, you don't see on the biggest stage ever. Man. I'm sure it might have happened before, but it's like you don't see it on the biggest stage ever.
I'd be hard-pressed to say, like, point it out to me. Yeah. Like, because I've never seen something like that.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of delayed reactions, and especially a delayed reaction at this level where it's like 10 seconds between them fucking falling.
The stare down between them the entire fight is so intense. You're seeing them throw shots, and you're seeing the weight advantage of Edson start to kind of weigh on Burgos a little bit. His shots are landing heavier. Those leg kicks, man, he could chop down a tree. And it reminded me of vintage Thiago Alves.
Yeah.
Just destroying the
Well, I think you could just say vintage Edson Barbosa.
Well, no, so I say because I remember Thiago kicking Josh Koscheck. And every time he kicked him, you're just like, oh, no, stop. Jose Aldo versus Uriah Faber.
Yeah, no, sure.
Stop doing that, right? And Shane looks like he's game, and you just see a light just kind of, like his eyes just kind of wander in the slow motion. You're like, what is going on?
Yeah,
and he's on his ass, dude.
It's a nuts thing to just have your body be like, yeah, man, like you're tough as shit. We're tough as shit, but I gotta get you out of here.
Dude, his eyes were like, oh no, what's happening? What's going on?
Well, and you know, I don't know if you've ever had those moments of lightheadedness or anything
dude.
that, not from getting fucking concussed or punched
getting
in the head,
up too quickly.
Like, but when you have that moment where you think you can just tell your balance isn't there, and he like, he's looking for anything to grab onto, man. Like, he just went for a fucking ride.
That cage could not come quick enough, because when he landed on it, it was just like, oh no. And then you just knew that it was over.
I saw a really funny cut of Justin Gaethje doing his backflip off the cage, and how he does the backflip and always falls backwards, but they spliced it so as soon as he hits the ground, it's Burgos. Like flying backwards. It's very funny.
We got to get that on our social media.
Yeah,
I need to see that.
One.
Man, but just, again, one of those instances where you're like, what did I just see? And how, for me at least, I'm like, I thought I saw all the craziness I needed to see with a guy getting his arms, a guy getting his arm snapped.
Yeah, and this is how they kicked off the main card.
Insane. All right, Lenny, we've been talking pretty much all episode about what happens when being a tough guy goes wrong. And I think there's no better example than what we saw at UFC 262 in the instance of Beniel Dariush versus Tony Ferguson in the co-main event of the evening, where Tony Ferguson refused to tap to a heel hook.
He did. Like,
Your
he
thoughts?
refused to tap to an armbar the last time he fought.
No, I get it.
Yeah, it was tough to watch. You hate to see it. You imagine his leg is torn to shit. I don't know if I want to get into the actual injury itself. Let's talk about his performance in the fight. And, for that matter, Beniel Dariush, because this is the biggest win of his career.
Yep.
This is it. Tony did not. His head movement looked okay, right? Like, I thought he had some good head movement getting in and out on strikes, but none of his actual strikes looked good. I think they said he's averaged like 30. He's landed 30 significant strikes in his last 30 minutes in the octagon. That's
insane.
Isn't that nuts?
That's crazy for a guy who was a bruiser.
This guy built himself on volume for a long time, and he's landed.
Is this since the Cowboy fight?
Probably about that. I mean, like,
apparently,
so it's over the 3 fights.
Yeah.
Gaethje, so it's got to be a little. No, it's over the past 2 fights. So it's Oliveira and
Gaethje.
No, it's Oliveira and Beniel.
Oh, so
because Gaethje went 25 by itself.
Okay, that makes sense. So I mean,
15 and 15. He was in 2 3-round fights.
That makes sense.
So it's over the past 2 fights.
Let's start arguing semantics with you over minutes.
Over the past 30 minutes of his fighting time in the octagon, he's landed 30 significant strikes, 1 per minute.
That's crazy to me.
Whereas he's absorbing some astronomical amount. And like this fight was a safe fight from Dariush. Like once he got him to the ground, it seemed like he knew he can control him there. He was locking down his biggest fight of his career. I don't begrudge him for that at all. Would I have loved him to throw down and do? I think he probably would have won a stand-up fight. I think he probably would have won just looking at the way Ferguson just doesn't look like there's any fluidity in his striking. Not that he ever really had some great.
He was awkward, but there was almost a method to his madness.
Yeah, now it's just like there's no flow to it. I don't know, man.
Tony Ferguson to me was a guy who never had any wasted movement. Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he looked funny when he was doing stuff, but you could tell that everything was calculated. Everything had a purpose. He was getting looks that he wanted to. He was setting things up. Since I don't even want to say since the Gaethje fight because he took a lot of damage in that fight, but man, we have not seen the same fighter since Justin Gaethje.
Yeah, I wish I could pull these stats out of my head that I see along the way. There was some crazy stat I saw the other day that it's like the past 10 fighters to fight Justin Gaethje, and it was like their cumulative record.
I saw that.
And it's like they're all ranked. They're all ranked guys.
They all have like no wins.
Yeah,
or like one or two wins.
I think their records were like 6-30 something.
So
like,
I think I saw three. So it was James Vick, Tony Ferguson,
maybe Cowboy.
Yes, Cowboy's the other one. And it was like these guys are 0-16 since they fought Justin Gaethje.
So I mean, the Cowboy one, I think you can kind of throw out because
he was on his way out.
Where he's already losing in the midst of that, but that didn't do well for him. But the Ferguson one, it's scary, man, because up until that point he looked great, and that was the kind of beating that we knew at the time would be hard to come back from, and it's proven to be the case.
Do you remember the punch that he takes from Justin, the overhand right, and his body, like he's literally shaking his head because at that point his body is like, hey man, we need to get out.
Yeah, we can't keep doing this. Yeah,
you hate to look back at a moment like that and be like, man, was that the last punch?
He was a punching bag for almost 5 rounds against a guy who you can't let do that.
Yeah, you can't be the nail for that type of hammer. It's scary to me to see a Tony Ferguson that doesn't land punches, that doesn't look like he was any threat off of his back.
And majority of the time he was just surviving, it seemed, off the back. They didn't talk about this enough, but I feel like the beginning of the second round, he basically concedes defeat to me a little bit in the fact that he just jumps that Darce but not in a position to get the Darce.
No, not even close.
It was so weird
that his legs were on the wrong side. Everything.
He sacrificed getting the arms locked up for the position, and it's like, I get how great you are at that, but didn't that feel a little bit like I can't stand with this guy, and if I just let him get the takedown,
that's the depiction of someone pulling guard in a terrible stand-up fight.
And
right? It's just bad.
Between that, I love that Dariush dumped him on his ass the way that Ferguson said he was going to. But like, of course, let's get into the biggest part of the fight. It's Tony gets put into a heel hook, I believe it was, or a knee bar.
No, I heard heel hook, so it didn't look like a knee bar, because I feel like a knee bar,
it would have torqued the leg more. Yeah, so it was a heel hook.
Torquing it up.
Yeah, so it was a heel hook, and he gets put in there, and as to be expected, he refuses to tap. And he's in clear pain.
He's writhing in pain.
My issue is this, Matt. And we were talking about earlier, BJS, right? Yeah. And we were talking about the reaction that he got of being a quitter coming out of that. And one of the things I posted on Twitter, I believe, the night of the Canelo fight, was, I think I added Helwani about this, because he often talks about corners not doing their part. And I was just like saying how, we always get on corners when Glover Teixeira is allowed to beat the shit out of Anthony Smith for 2 rounds too long. And when these guys are in these instances where they're not going to win, and it's the corner's got to be the one to step in because the fighter's too proud. And I thought it was important to commend like BJS's corner for seeing that and not forcing it. Because how many times did he say, who was the guy who came back to the corner in MMA and he was just like, I don't got it. And they just kept telling him how he did the whole time. Do you remember that? I almost want to say it was like Sarah Longo or something, but I don't think it was them.
No, it wasn't Sarah Longo, and I'm almost like I'm falling on TJ's camp.
But it's like they came back to the corner and were just like, I don't have it tonight. And they were like, you got it, champ. You got it, champ. Like, you can do it. And even it's like Tony's corner in this fight is fucking sitting there like, not even telling him he's losing the fight. They're acting like he's fucking winning somehow. And like, how this guy doesn't want to stand with you, champ. This guy doesn't want to fucking stand with you, champ. That's not insightful. And then to me, when you see a guy, these guys are way more knowledgeable than me and you, right? They train fighters. They've trained themselves. They may have even taken part.
So if we can see the moment where you should be throwing in the towel and stepping up for your fighter, how come you can't?
If you know what a person's leg is like after they get that, and when you know that like this dude doesn't grimace in pain like that for anything, but is on the ground writhing in pain, how? And I get Tony will not want you to call it, but there was nothing to send him out for in the third round.
You made a mention of it. That you felt like Tony conceded defeat
before his leg even got
before
folded.
His knee got destroyed.
Yeah.
I ask you, we give these guys props, we credit them for their toughness, for their tenacity. This is one of the instances where being a tough guy gets you nothing because you've already had your knee repaired and it was the worst part of your life. You've gone on record and said that it was the worst part of your career to have to be able to sit around and do nothing. What does not tapping in this instance do for you, but put you in the exact same scenario? That now your knee is destroyed.
You're late 30s. You have a life outside of fighting. Like, he has kids. He has a wife.
Where are you going?
Like, I just don't... And, you know, he's talking about not hanging it up, which all the power to him. I hope the man finds a way to come back from this. But, like, as long as you're going to not be able to admit that, like... Dude, there's nothing... I thought the whole thing with jiu-jitsu is that they train you that it's, like, it's okay to tap. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, it's okay to, like, you don't want to tap. That's not the goal, but, like, it's part of the sport.
I think I'm getting upset in a way that it doesn't make sense, right? But I get upset at the fact that this is someone who is still very much at the top of that division. He's not out of it by any means. And we're going to throw away his future in the sport.
To not look like a pussy. Which nobody would have called him a pussy.
And what's more frustrating is that I was told before this that he's training with Freddie Roach and he has finally appointed a head coach. You appoint a head coach for this reason, to be able to make that decision.
Decisions. There was no reason to send him back out in the third. And you saw the way he was compromised.
He couldn't move.
Yeah.
He couldn't plant his foot, Lenny.
He actually landed a punch. I don't know if you remember that. In the third round, he managed to, like... And that's what's going to give credence to the idea that, like, anything can happen.
But no.
But, dude, he spent the third round... in the 69 position, like he did against Charles Oliveira, because he knows he can go there and stay safe because he has no chance of, like, that's why would you even, like, that doesn't look better to me either.
To me, I would rather you tap. Yeah. I would rather you tap than go into a shell of who I know you to be. I'll pin it with this. The tough guy routine, the whole, oh, you think my time is done, you haven't seen the last of me. That tweet means even less to me. Props to you. You know, the road to recovery. That means less to me as a fan because I would have rather you tapped and then said, hey, this isn't the end of me. Going into my next fight with a better head on my shoulder. No, dude, I'm not going to see you for a year because your knee is done. Yeah,
I mean, well, he's crazy, so we'll probably see him in 6 months. I don't know. I don't know where he goes from here because I don't know where you can match him up. He can't go down to 145, right? Like, he's already looks pretty slim down when he gets to 55.
Can't go to 170.
He's too small for 70. He's not. He's going to get cracked too much at 70. Is he going to be okay fighting guys that are outside of the top 10?
The UFC's not going to give him guys outside of the top 10.
But who is there then in 155 that he could put him against? What's he going to fight? Vicente Luque? Is that where he's going? Or that's 170. But, like,
that's where I get frustrated, man, because this guy is already in a dark spot as it is for what you're going to do with your career.
You know what's going to happen, Matt?
Actually, throw an injury in them.
This is where it's going to go. Because they're going to want to put him with a bigger name. So, like, I could see them wanting to throw him out there with Chandler because they're both coming off losses.
In a year and a half from now?
But I actually think Tony Ferguson ends up fighting Islam Makhachev.
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
Because Islam, they need Islam to fight a name guy, and everybody is supposedly ducking him. Felder turned him down. RDA turned him down.
Makhachev's top 15 right now, isn't he? Is he
yeah,
top 10?
But he's fighting somebody who's not even ranked.
No, I know. But I wasn't sure if he cracked the top 10
I think
yet.
He's like right outside of it because nobody in the top 10 will face him. But I just think that it makes a lot of sense as far as getting him a ranked fighter to be able to fight against, right? 155.
Yeah, he's at 10.
He's at 10.
Okay, so I knew.
So you know what I mean? Where it's like, this is Tony Ferguson's crazy. So that's the kind of guy I could see Ferguson wanting to get in there and fight. Two guys stand out to me on this list. Okay, first of all, it's Islam because there's a connection to Habib. And Tony has not had the nicest things to say about Habib. And how do you continue to talk shit about Habib is to go out there and fight his brother, his protege. Right? His best friend. The other name that stands out to me for Tony Ferguson is Dan Hooker. Coming off of a difficult loss, ranked similarly, a guy who's going to want to stand with Tony, not going to want to break in another limb or anything.
So not to interrupt you, man, but we're talking two different timetables at this point because I would imagine that Dan Hooker gets a fight before Tony's back.
Yeah.
So is he coming off a loss at this point? We don't know.
Rematch Kevin Lee and fucking Tony Ferguson down the line.
If you really want to get him a win, you put him up against Kevin Lee.
You could.
Because that's a guy to me that I just...
How nuts is this? Who was the last time... What was the last time Kevin Lee fought, Matt? Was it Barbosa?
No, I think the question you're asking is when's the last time he got a win?
Was it... No, so that's what I was going to say, though, is he fought Oliveira, lost Oliveira. His last victory was Gregor Gillespie.
Yeah,
that's why I'm bringing it up.
He's on a 2-fight or a 3-fight losing streak.
He's ranked behind Gillespie. I think he's only on a 1-fight losing streak. Yeah, I'm right.
Lee Oliveira. Oh, okay. I don't know why. I thought I saw him get another loss.
No, it's just I was thinking about how it's funny that Gillespie is ranked in front of him coming off the win last week. Oh, that was a great victory, by the way.
Yeah,
it was great. That was a fun fucking fight too, by the Gregor Gillespie versus Diego
Fajeda. Good to see Gillespie get back on his run. It was an emotional
win too.
Yeah.
But yeah, back on track. So I think that makes some sense. Where do you see Beniel going from here? Who do you think you would match him up with next?
So Beniel it's an interesting situation for him because the only people ranked ahead of him at this point would be Oliveira, Poirier, and Gaethje.
Him and Gaethje aren't going to fight, I don't think.
Him and Gaethje, you don't get that fight. I think
Gaethje
you've got Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor coming.
Mm-hmm.
The only fight that kind of makes sense, you give him Michael Chandler.
Michael Chandler coming off a loss, I don't know if it makes sense. I think they're going to want to book... I think you're getting Gaethje versus Chandler, personally, because that's a money fight.
That's a big fight, but...
That's Matt, I almost promise you that's where we're going next.
Listen, man, you've been the UFC matchmaker before, dude. I'm not going to disagree with you.
I think what makes sense here is two people for Beniel Dariush. He's going to have to fight down below, because I don't think he has any type of name credit to fight any of those guys in the top 5. They're too established.
Yeah, he jumped to 3 on name value.
He could be... he could be a title, he could be one of those guys they bring in case something happens for an Oliveira matchup. But I think more likely is you see RDA or Paul Felder.
So I was even going to say Dan Hooker for that matter.
No, but coming off a loss, it doesn't make sense for the Dan Hooker one. As much as RDA is coming off a win, he's a guy who they're going to want to get back into the top 5. It seems like it would make sense to put him and Beniel in a matchup.
The rankings kind of make me mad, dude. Because how does Beniel Dariush jump ahead of the guy who just fought for the title?
Why not? I mean, the guy. This actually makes more sense than they ever do.
Does it though?
Yeah, why not? Beniel Dariush is on an 8-fight win streak. Why wouldn't he be in front of any of those guys?
I guess I don't know how they're not consistent with how they work because win streaks almost don't guarantee you the best ranking.
No, but I do agree. Luke Thomas always talks about this. How come a guy could lose in a title fight and stay a number 1 contender?
Yeah.
That's automatically to me, if you've lost, you should have to work back down the rankings, because this should just be lined up on who gets a title shot next.
But that's what I'm saying. The rankings have never worked that way, because you could be the number 7th guy.
But that's why I don't. But then you shouldn't have an issue with Beniel cracking through to this top 5 on his talent, not on his name, on his talent and what he's done. Because Michael Chandler should be 4th. Michael Chandler should be either in front of Conor or right behind Conor.
I guess.
But Ferguson should be further down the list to me.
I know, but so that's what I'm saying.
RDA should be in front of Ferguson. Ferguson is so far from
Tony
a title
Ferguson
fight.
Shouldn't have been in the top 5 for me.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
So I don't understand. If anything, Beniel should jump to 5 just because he beat him. But I don't see how.
No, he has to jump over Conor. Conor hasn't won in 3 years. Chandler has just lost, and he only has 1 victory in the UFC.
Yeah, but the guy who Conor has lost to is the undisputed champion. And the guy who lost to the undisputed champion.
That's fine. That's fine.
So
but those are still losses.
All right. No, I get that. But
8 wins in a row, Matt.
No, I understand that. Tony Ferguson had 12 in a row, and he didn't get a title shot.
But he did get title shots. He just didn't actually get to the cage.
You know what I mean.
So let's move on, because you've brought up Chandler's name a few times. Let's get into the main event. So we had Oliveira versus Chandler.
Yeah, we blew our load saying that Chandler lost.
Yeah,
if people didn't know, we ruined it. Spoiler.
You know, I had done a little video and I didn't put it out last week where I made a prediction. And basically what my prediction was that the fact that you could get finish on either one of these guys by betting at positive money was where your money should be.
Yeah.
Because both of these guys are finishers. They are both guys that don't come looking
In
for
one way or another.
decisions.
Yep.
And Michael Chandler has been finished, so I saw a real reality where he got knocked out or put down like that. But I also know that Oliveira is a guy who's wilted under pressure, and he was going to be facing a lot of pressure. What we've really seen is that Oliveira, the other thing I mentioned in this video, and I think is what came to be true, Oliveira and Chandler had very different paths to get to the UFC, right? One went through what can be considered possibly an easier path of fighters for an elite guy outside of the UFC where there's not as much of a talent pool, but still had his difficulty because he did fight good guys. The Pitbull brothers are good.
I wasn't going to argue with
Alvarez
any of
great,
that.
right?
Yeah.
But Oliveira was raised, it's kind of like pressure makes diamonds. You know, he's 21 years old. He fights in 2011 for the first time in the UFC.
Beat by Jim Miller?
No.
Or does he win his debut?
He won before he ever got to those. So he starts that long ago and has seen his ups and downs. And you look at boxing, and a guy has 7 losses or whatever, and they're never going to sell. They would never be a champion again because they can't get them.
Unless your name is Shane Mosley.
But in this sport, those 7 losses are all quality losses.
Yeah.
He lost to great guys like Max Holloway, Jim Miller, these guys, right? And all he did was learn and learn and learn. And what you're seeing now is a 31-year-old guy in his physical prime with all of that wealth of knowledge.
With 10 years worth of UFC experience.
Yeah, and he was able to get through a tough first round,
Incredible.
a competitive first round, maybe the best round of the year so far, or one of the best rounds of the year,
really
right?
Intense.
Back and forth. Chandler, with this man on his back, showed how great his defense is and how he's never been tapped out. I didn't think he would get finished, but him dropping for a guillotine was a little funny to me in the first round, but it was pretty fucking tight. But yeah, great round. And Oliveira answered a lot of questions. I think he showed you that he's not that guy who wilts under pressure like he used to.
I don't want to say I saw it, but it almost felt like there was a change in momentum because Oliveira coming out of that first round, you're like, what's he going to do?
Mm-hmm.
How's he going to come back from this? And when he came out of that second round and just...
I mean, it was seconds. It took him.
He blitzed Michael Chandler.
I mean, dude, so what he was doing great was he was standing upright, straight up, and he kept lifting that knee. So he's stopping, there's a obvious height difference, and Chandler's style is the bounce in and out.
Yep.
And it just seemed like, I watched what it was again, Big John, and clearly a very informative podcast this week. Check it out if you haven't. But he was talking about if you go back and watch the beginning of that fight, and I noticed this. I didn't notice so much of Chandler's body language, but when Oliveira did the walk around the octagon and he stopped and greeted everybody in the corner, to me it was just like, this guy is so okay with this moment. It looked like, and it also looked like mentally, you're almost lulling the guy in front of you into a little bit of sleep. But, what Big John points out is look at Chandler in the corner and look at all the deep breaths.
It's intense.
He's like constantly. And that's generally when your nerves are getting the best of you and you're just trying to take deep breaths to calm yourself down. And he's like, just look at the way he fought. Look at the way he handled it.
Well, that's what I mean about the shift in momentum is because we've talked on this podcast about Charles Oliveira's past with wilting under pressure, and there was something about that. I felt like Chandler didn't get the finish in that first round, and he was not going to win because he didn't get the finish in that first round.
And it's like he's a guy who does get rocked. He's had tough fights in his career. It's not like he's impervious to getting rocked. And that was one of the things I was saying. They're both finishers and they've both been finished.
Yeah.
It's like Chandler does get rocked. He's tough as hell and he comes through it on the other side. But sometimes he gets finished.
And we've seen him get finished in big fights. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Alvarez and Will Brooks. Both, right?
And Will Brooks was the big one because
people thought he was going to
People thought he was going to walk through Will Brooks. And Will Brooks, another name that made it to the UFC and just wilted under that pressure.
Yeah, didn't do as well.
So you could understand where Michael Chandler might have been bringing in the weight of the world, so to speak, on his shoulders.
That left hook from Oliveira, though, I mean, you don't get much better, right? It's tight, very tight, no wind up. Whereas you're getting all this explosiveness from Chandler. Oliveira's punch to put him down just showed that all you have to do sometimes is be accurate.
Timing, bit, speed.
Yeah. And he just put it right on him. And like I said, I think it was the not being able to get the distance the way he wants to because he keeps having knees and teeps coming up at him. And then this tight left hand hits him on the jaw and sends him spinning backwards. I was a little surprised that he seemed to retreat. I mean, I guess I wasn't surprised because he was rocked.
Yeah.
But you normally see a guy in that situation, and if he had to jump for a takedown, maybe this is why he didn't jump for a takedown. He's probably getting tapped.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But and maybe that's why he decided not to jump for a takedown.
You're out of the pan and into the fire, brother.
Yeah,
like, that's not what you want to be.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so Oliveira, long-awaited win. One of the greatest victories, celebrations I think we've gotten in a long time. They referenced Jose Aldo in Brazil.
Yeah.
I was surprised they let him do this, especially after Habib's going into the crowd and everything.
It's COVID, too.
Yeah.
You would hope that there's some type of restrictions, but he was just like, nah, I'm out here.
I almost think you should fine him. Not that I want to see a guy lose money, but I think you just need to, like, it's the same thing with, like, not allowing people to push it weigh-ins, right? It's like you need to set precedents so these things don't keep happening.
Yeah, we need to see some type of consistency. A guy can't run out of the cage to celebrate the same way that he can't run out of the cage to beat the shit out of somebody.
Exactly. So you can't predict how that's going to go until it happens. So
you got to be careful.
To let people have the idea that they can do it is tough. Did you see the celebration in Brazil?
I did not.
Oh my God, dude!
Yeah, huge.
I mean, I'm glad COVID's not in Brazil.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah,
because it's not exactly like people in Brazil are following the rules.
They are just like hugging, kissing, like no fucks given.
Well,
but I mean, it looks like so much fun. Like I was happy for him.
There was something like genuinely beautiful when you see fandoms, or I don't even know how I would say this word, but when you see a community of fans that are genuinely in love with either the team or the person that they're supporting, to the point where you can see 100,000 people sitting outside of a stadium just looking at a jumbotron, right? It almost, we hear the USA chants, USA, but it's like, do you even know who you're going for?
Yeah.
Like, do you even have
but
the
it's
same
the same
inclination?
thing with like the Brazilian fans are quite the same way in terms of nationalistic.
Sure, but I could almost guarantee you that everybody crying and smooching probably knows who Charles Oliveira is.
Yeah.
And is kind of ridden with him during this journey. So an incredible performance and an even bigger win.
Matt, how many US based champions are there in the UFC?
That would be a hot zero.
No, that's not true.
No? Oh, okay.
There's one.
I guess. Who am I missing? Heavyweight, light heavyweight, middleweight, welter. Who's our welterweight champion?
Kamaru Usman,
It's Nigerian. No, I'm missing it, dude. Who is it?
Bantamweight.
Oh, Aljamain. Yeah, man. USA.
Salty time to be an American fight fan.
That's the epitome of USA fandoms, dude. It's like the guy who is our only champion got it on a technicality.
Yeah.
It's all right, man.
So it's like kind of back to those days. Remember when it was like every champion was from Brazil for that short period of time? It's kind of like all of a sudden, like we had taken back the belts. We gave them all back.
We gave them all back.
We gave them all back again.
That's tough, man. Stipe brought it back to Cleveland. Teron Woodley was holding it down from Mizzou.
Yeah. You had 155 tough, was Eddie Alvarez for that brief stint.
Philly.
Max Holloway for 145 held it down for a long time. So, yeah, we got to get some U.S.-based champions back. We should do, maybe next week we prepare for this. Who do we think the next U.S.-based real champion will be?
That, yeah.
So come with that answer next week. Before we get out of here, Matt, great fights. If you let us know what you thought. Who should we see Oliveira defend his title against first? How long do you think he's going to hold the belt? He has had a long career. Are those miles going to catch up at some point?
Does he face a Conor McGregor Dustin Poirier winner? Ooh,
I think that's most likely.
Possibly.
But before we get out of here, Matt, we got a couple fights this weekend. So give me your pick for the main event of Bellator on Friday. This is going to be the rematch of Cyborg Santos against Leslie Smith.
Yeah, this one's easy. I'm going with Cyborg on this one.
Cyborg by whatever the fuck she wants.
By domination.
Yes.
How about that?
Yeah.
I think the fight that we're a little bit more interested in kind of putting a pick on.
Austin Van Zandt versus whoever he's fighting.
Yeah, I'm going to go for Austin Van Zandt.
He's pretty fucking good.
Shout out his girls' All Access Inside page that my man checked out. But the fight that I'm talking about, Lenny.
About resubscribing.
Rob Font versus Cody Garbrandt. Rob Font, the local hero for us. Mm-hmm. Who do you got winning this fight?
I'm going with Rob Font.
Okay.
I think the guy has looked fucking fantastic. He's got the stand-up ability to keep it interesting with Garbrandt here. And you know that Cody only wants to throw and bang.
Yeah.
I think Rob Font's getting the job done here. Of course, wouldn't be surprised if Garbrandt got the win, but I'm taking Font by stoppage.
Yeah, I'll pad that with I'm taking Rob Font by decision.
Oh,
I'm going to go ahead and guess decision.
You think these dudes make it 5 rounds?
I don't think he knocks Cody out, but I do think he might beat the shit out of Cody for the better part of 3 rounds.
Nah, Cody's a little chinny to me, so yeah, I'm sticking with Rob Font by finish, man.
I just didn't want to give you the satisfaction of agreeing with you again, dude.
All right, dude,
I'm not
be on the
about
wrong
that.
side of history.
No, I said he's gonna win.
Yeah, by decision.
Doesn't make the headlines.
I'm real
dude.
ride or die, bro.
Whatever, man. It should be interesting. Which Cody Garbrandt actually shows up? Who knows? But that's what we've got for fight picks. Anything else going on in the world of WWE this weekend, Len?
No, I mean, like I said, I had a WWE WrestleMania Backlash is what they called it. It was interesting.
Don't they just normally call it Backlash?
Yeah, they decided to brand it nice for Peacock this year.
Oh, they did it for the cock.
Yeah, we all do it for the cock.
No, I do it for the cock.
Yeah, so it was a decent event. Although there was this one thing about like zombies showing up.
The Fiend?
No, I mean like real zombies, Matt.
See, this is where I think we're gonna check out, man. Because as soon as you start talking zombies outside of The Walking Dead,
I wasn't happy about it either.
Oh man,
they said Batista sent zombies for Zack Snyder's movie.
So they have somehow tried to collaborate with Zack Snyder and Dave Batista?
They did collaborate for it. It was a lumberjack match where the lumberjacks were zombies. It was bad.
Yeah, I think that's all we've got for anyone who's got good taste in the world of MMA, combat sports. And yes, believe it or not, even the WWE can ruin someone's day with zombies.
It was ugly. It was an ugly. The rest of the event, fantastic. Watch everything else. Just don't watch that.
Yeah, I don't think I believe you on the rest of the event. But if you believe them, hit us in the comments. Let us know what you thought of WWE WrestleMania Backlash. Terrible name, by the way. WrestleMania Backlash, sorry. Sounds awful, but you know what doesn't sound awful? We don't, because you stuck it out this long. Hit us in the comments. Hit us with a like. Make sure to hit the damn subscribe button. You keep on watching without hitting the subscribe button.
Hey, and we are on social media at For Those With Good Taste on Instagram and at Good Taste Alive on Twitter. Both are on fire as of late. Come check it out. Help us get over 50 subscribers on Twitter. Help us get to our first 125 on Instagram. That'd be pretty fucking cool, huh?
Yeah, don't be lazy. Hit us in the subscribes. We're out, guys.
Love you. Peace.
I did peace. Fuck. Deuce.
I think it's deuces.
For those with good taste.